Storytime about how two men tried to kidnap me after work. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. I just turned 19 years old and I've been working at a coffee shop for 6 months. Unfortunately, sometimes I have to close the coffee shop all by myself, but it didn't really ever bother me until now. My parents, on the other hand, really don't like for me to close the coffee shop by myself, which of course makes total sense. At first I thought they were just overreacting, but they weren't. My parents would usually pick me up after my closing shift, but they would always arrive 15 minutes before I actually had to lock up just to make sure that I got out safely. 2 weeks ago, my dad had to go on a business trip, so my mom was the one that was going to have to go pick me up by herself. A few hours before closing time, my mom texted me saying that unfortunately the car wasn't turning on. She told me that she would call AAA, but I told her not to worry and that I would just get an Uber home. She kept fighting me on it, but I managed to convince her to just stay home. I kept my mom in the loop the entire night about the closing shift, and finally I called my Uber. The Uber was 10 minutes away, so I just waited inside until I saw them pull up. As I was gathering my things and putting on a jacket, I hear a knock at the door. When I turn around to look, it's a guy in a suit. He begs for me to let him in so that he could get a coffee. I apologized and said that we were closed for the night, but that he could come back in the morning. Then he started begging more and more. I actually felt really bad for him because he looked like he was freezing, so I decided to open the door and let him in quickly. He ordered an espresso and I quickly made it. I handed it to him, he paid really quickly and told me he was on his way out. Suddenly, another guy walks in through the door because I forgot to lock it behind me. And when the other guy walks in, the first guy told him to go straight to the cash register. Instantly, I knew that I was being robbed. But the guy with the suit was definitely the mastermind behind everything. He told me to sit down and that as long as I didn't do anything, he wouldn't hurt me. But I remembered I had the Uber still on the way. But it's not like I could pull out my phone to check if it was near. There was a panic button underneath the counter under the register, but I was sitting 2 tables away from it. Suddenly, I feel something in the back of my neck. The guy that had just been at the cash register comes up behind me and starts blowing on my neck. He started saying how pretty I was and that I looked way better in person than in picture. The guy in the suit chuckled and said, yeah, she is pretty in person. Suddenly, he grabs me by my arm and tells me that I'm leaving with them. I begged and begged for them not to. That's when I remembered my dad gave me a tip in case someone was ever trying to pick me up. I threw myself to the ground and acted as dead weight. It made it really hard for the one guy to pick me up. Luckily, I could reach over and hold onto a pole that was right near the register, and I held onto it as tight as I could. We struggled for about 30 seconds. Suddenly, the other guy comes in front of me, bites my hands down so that I could let go of the pole. Instead, I kept holding on tight. Out of nowhere, my phone starts to ring and I realize it's probably the Uber driver. I told the guys that my Uber driver was waiting for me outside and that they would get caught. The Uber driver must have seen what was happening inside because he started beeping really loud. The guy in the suit puts me in a chokehold and I begin to pass out. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how two men tried to kidnap me after work. Disclaimers are not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. The man in the suit had me in a chokehold, but I could hear the Uber driver beeping as loud as he could outside. He had already seen what was happening to me and probably already called the cops. The man in the suit dragged my body towards the back exit. His partner had already left. This is when I saw my opportunity. I knew where all the pans and pots and knives were. I reached for a pot and I hit him as hard as I could. But unlike how it happens in the movies, he did not pass out. Instead, this made him angrier, but it gave me a second to run towards the front of the store. As soon as I did that, I could hear the police sirens pulling up toward the front of the store. This made the man in the suit back away from me. I ran to the cops and I was safe. Unfortunately, the 2 men haven't been found, and I was interrogated for hours. My dad came home from the trip, but now I'm terrified that these guys know where I live. Also, what picture was he talking about? The police think that they had been stalking me for weeks, if not months. I'm terrified and I don't know what to do. Help.
Am I the asshole for having my wedding ceremony in sign language? I'm 24 female, deaf, and growing up, my parents got me bilateral cochlear implants and forced me into mainstream school. Never taught me sign language and never immersed me into my culture as a deaf person. They were actually pretty against me using ASL at all. Well, I took ASL in high school against my parents' wishes and then got into a deaf university. Although I couldn't sign fluently when I started, I finally felt accepted and understood. The deaf community was nothing but welcoming. I became fluent in ASL, and after a few months, I stopped wearing my processors completely as there was no need for them anymore. I honestly didn't realize how alone I had felt until I didn't feel that way anymore. I met my fiance at college. He is from a very large family of deaf people, and everyone is fluent in sign. We've been together 4 years now. He proposed last May. We've been planning the wedding and have decided to have it fully.
Story time of how I caught my teacher and my best friend doing the dirty. So everything was fine up until the middle of the year when she started acting really strange, and so did he. So at the time, I was 13 and she was 14, in the back left corner of the classroom. He would also always make jokes with her, which I didn't really understand until I found out they were sleeping together. So on Friday, my mom messaged her parents asking if they could pick me up Monday because my parents were going out of town that weekend and I hated riding the bus. Well, I'm guessing she didn't know that I was going home with her Monday. So that Monday, I got into her mom's car and I asked her mom where she was. Her mom said that she was failing math and her math teacher offered to tutor her. This teacher was also brand new. I'm running out of time, so for part 2. Here's part 2 of how I found out my best friend was sleeping with our teacher. So continuing on with the story, I told her mom that I've never seen him tutor somebody before. Plus, she told me her grades were sky high in that class. I ended up forgetting my pencil pouch, which had my keys to my house in it, so I had to go back anyways. And when I went back, the door was locked. And like he had something over it or whatever, but I could see under it because he didn't cover it all the way. And she was on his desk and he was kissing her or doing weird stuff. I knew her mom wouldn't believe me if I told her what I saw, so I just told her it was an emergency and she was in trouble. So we booked it back to the classroom, and at first we didn't see them, and then she seen a foot come from beside the desk. Mind you, we're peeking under it, so we couldn't really see much. She starts banging on the classroom door and screaming. I've never seen her this mad. I was honestly terrified that I ran into a separate classroom. The teacher to this day, I'm pretty sure he's still in jail, and she is still homeschooled and grounded with no phone. We found out that he was married with 4 kids. Well, was married.
Story time about why I beat up my best friend. So a little background information. Her and I had been best friends since we were in 7th grade. Her family was rich, mine was poor, and at first she was a really good friend. She was always there for me whenever I needed her, until our freshman year of high school, which is when her and I started hanging out with boys. Now, my mom was kind of strict. She wouldn't really let me hang out with boys, but her mom was more lenient about her hanging out with boys. Every weekend she would throw a party at her house, and she would throw them in her attic because 1, it was huge, and 2, her parents didn't give a fuck what she did up there. Anyways, she would always offer to do my hair and makeup before the party started, which always made me really excited because I never really put any work into my physical appearance. Well, little did I know, the only reason why she would offer to do my hair and makeup at these parties was so that way she could make me look like shit in front of all the boys. So after that, I taught myself how to do my own makeup and do my own hair, like for part 2.
Part 2 about why I beat up my best friend. So like I said, I learned how to do my hair and makeup, and she went on vacation for like a month straight. Well, when she came home, she threw another party, and she was like, don't worry, after I'm done getting ready, I'll do your makeup and do your hair. And I was like, no, it's fine, I got it. She literally looks at me and she goes, are you sure? You don't really know how to do that. Like, it'll probably look really bad. And I'm like, why the fuck would you say that? She goes, no, like, I don't mean it to be rude. It's just that, like, I want you to look good in front of the boys and stuff like that. Like, sis tried to talk me into getting a shower for a full, like, 20 minutes. So after that, the whole night, she's literally being a pick-me girl. She's making all these comments about me in front of the boys, and I just keep brushing them off until her next party. We got ready, and I put on these expensive shoes that I had just bought, and she goes, wow, you just like really like to copy my style, don't you? So she starts making comments that whole night about how my family's poor and stuff like that, and she threw up all over my shoes. So I dumped the trash can that everybody had threw up in that night on her, punched her in the face, but like 2 months later she came to my house and apologized.
Do you know what I've realised? This is going to sound so stupid, but nothing even matters. Like, I was deep in this the other day. So we're all going to die eventually, right? That means for like the 70, 80, 90 years we're on this earth, really all we're doing is experiencing things amongst each other. If you really think about it, who is going to remember what you did to Oh So Too Trappy on the 9th of July? Do you know what I mean? Life's actually too short. We really should just be living it to the fullest. And I'm really starting to just not care anymore. In 100, 200 years, no one's even going to remember my existence. We really should just be living life like enjoyment every day. All I'm saying is, what you want to do, just do it. Live your life, experience what you need to experience, because it doesn't matter what mistakes you make. Nothing matters. Life is really just too short.
I almost got shot at a party. Story time. So back when I was 18, one of my homegirls decided to visit me. Keep in mind, I lived about 2 hours away from her. In the ghetto. Ra-ta-ta-ta. Anyway, she gets to my house. We're having a great time. We're chilling, we're vibing. Then one of my friends hits me up and says, hey, yo, Kenzie, there's a party tonight. You should slide. So, of course, I tell my homegirl, bitch, it's a party. Let's go. My friend was kind of nervous about it because this was her very first party that she's ever went to in her life. So she didn't know if she should go or not. And I was like, girl, like, you're going to be with me. You're going to be with Kenzie. Baby, we're going to have a good time. But I also did tell her if she didn't want to go, she can just chill with me and we could drink at the house. She ends up saying, fuck it. And we both go to the party. So we Uber to the party. This bitch is fat. There was hella people at this party, but it was lit as hell and everybody was turned the fuck up. Well, anyways, in the front of the house, there was a drug deal going on. And that's when everything goes south. Buckle up for part 2.
If you've heard of the movie Megan is Missing, you're gonna want to hear this story. So this movie is based off a real story of a man named Ward Weaver. So Ward Weaver grew up in Portland, Oregon, and he turned out to be The movie Megan is Missing is based on the time that two girls and them and some met in his backyard. My parents lived in Oregon their whole life until they had kids, and they were always buying houses and flipping them. So they were constantly looking for new houses to buy. So my parents found this one house in northern Portland that they thought was a pretty nice house and it was pretty cheap. So they decided to go check it out. So after the realtor showed my parents this house, they decided to buy it. After the first few days of them trying to flip this house, they noticed some really weird things starting to happen. There were lights that were randomly flashing and doors that would randomly close. Then they hear a knock on the door. I'm sorry, but come back for part 2.
If anyone's wanting to know how to get revenge on someone who spread rumors about you, listen to this story and it may come in handy. So I had a friend that we can call Miranda who was obsessed with me. I was genuinely friends with her, but she would never give me a break. I could not get a breather from her at any point in time. Everywhere I went, she went. And this girl would actually get so upset with me anytime I would go over to another friend's house. I knew she was really insecure and just trying to get attention, so I tried to be patient with her. However, one day I just could not take it anymore. I got into a massive fight with her over how overprotective she is. I literally said, "You are a stage 5 clinger." And in response, this girl ended up joining my basketball and softball team, which I've been on for forever. She told her mom that I was bullying her, which was a complete lie, but then her mom went to the coaches. She got me kicked off the team and then continued to spread rumors about me. I ended up losing my best friends and even my boyfriend over the rumors that she spread about me. So that's when I decided to get revenge. So I decided that I was going to send her over an apology gift with makeup in it, which was a mix of drugstore items and poison ivy.
These fantasies started 2 years ago? 3 years ago? When?
2 years ago. It's always the same. It starts the same way.
How? Tell me.
I prepare for the noble war. I'm calm. I know the secret. I know what's coming, and I know no one can stop me, including myself.
Do you target people who have been mean to you or unkind?
I kill people I like.
Can I help you?
Some of them beg for their life. I don't feel sad. I don't feel anything. It's a filthy world we live in. It's a filthy, goddamn helpless world. And honestly, I feel like I'm helping to take them away from the shit and the piss and the vomit that run in the streets. I'm helping to take them somewhere clean and kind.
Story time! So yesterday my friends and I all went to the fair and there were 6 of us in total. And none of us wanted to have to worry about driving there and parking, so we just Ubered instead. So we left the fair around 11:15 and we walked to a nearby shopping center where the Uber picked us up about 10 minutes late. We ended up leaving at 11:30. We get in the Uber, the man says hello, and we head home the normal way. Everything's fine. And my parents don't like when I Uber, so they were tracking me on Life 360 from the moment I got in the car. After about 10 minutes in, I get a text from my mom, and it said, "Where are you?" I look up from my phone and I realize I have no idea where we are, and Ubers know their directions, they know how to take you home. We were 20 minutes out of the way. So I'm terrified. My mom's texting me nonstop, literally about to call the police. I'm gonna run out of time, but posting part 2 today. Okay, back to the Uber story. Our parents are freaking out, we're texting each other in our group chat so he doesn't hear us. Also, while this is all happening, he wasn't talking to us, but he had an earbud in, and he was talking to someone on the phone really quietly. It was super creepy. My mom starts calling me again, and he hears the ring. And one of my friends pulled up on her phone the directions to get home, which he also heard, so he knew that we thought something was off. After a little while longer, we finally know where we are, so we feel a little bit better. We were getting really close to the turn that goes into my friend's neighborhood, and we were thinking, if he doesn't make this turn, we're screwed. Thank goodness he makes a turn and we're back at my friend's house. But the scary thing is what if he was planning something, but since our phones were ringing and we had the GPS up, that he changed his mind. Because we were not going home. I still can't stop thinking about it. This is the one time Life 360 has come in handy. We're all safe now.
Story time on how me and my stepdad were doing the nasty and my mom walked in on us. Okay, so boom. I was 18 at the time and my stepdad was 40. My stepdad been with my mom for like 2 years and it's only the 3 of us in the house. My stepdad always treated me well and gave me lots of money. Every time my mom would tell me no, here comes my stepdad to the rescue, turning that to a yes. Me and my stepdad were alone together a lot and it would be very flirty between us. As the days went by, we got flirtier and flirtier and farther and farther. It started off as flirting, then we cuddled, and then cuddling turned turned into making out. I literally couldn't wait till my mom goes to work so I could spend time with him. My mom didn't suspect a thing. When my mom was home, I barely talked to my stepdad and I always stayed in my room. At this point, me and my stepdad didn't do the nasty yet, but this night I was gonna make sure it happened. Cause I seen my stepdad kiss my mom goodbye and I was pissed. Once she left, I turned it up, like for part 2. Part 2 on how me and my stepdad were doing the nasty and my mom walked in on us. So like I said, my mom went to work and business started as usual. My stepdad was in the living room picking a movie, so I came down from my room and cuddled with him in the couch. We started making out and all of a sudden my mom was calling my stepdad's phone. He tried to answer, but I took his phone and put it on do not disturb mode. I wanted him all to myself. I got on top of him and things got real. All of a sudden we were both on the couch undressed going crazy. And just when we were about to start doing the nasty, my mom screamed, "Get off of her!" My stepdad and I both jumped up and I was shocked and terrified. He ran to my mom saying, "Please let me explain," and my mom slapped him.
Story time about my crazy alcoholic dad. So a little background information, I was not close to my dad, nor was my sister, and my mum had full custody of both of us. But one night she decided she would let us stay at our dad's house for a sleepover. We got in and everything was going well. Me and my sister at the time were younger, so we went to sleep around 11. So we went to bed and this is when it started to get weird. Legit, my dad came into the room while me and my sister were asleep and squatted on the floor saying, "Oh, what a pretty floor," but he was butt naked. He was freaking us out and we just assumed he was sleepwalking until he came back into the room later that night. But he had came in with our stepmom behind his back. I don't know what he was doing, I don't know what he was taking. He must have been drinking or something as he began to hit her. Her nose began to bleed and she was covered in bruises from previous days. She was screaming, we were screaming, and me and my sister just held each other in fear. A few hours passed and I literally wake up with the burning sensations in my eyes. I smelled something hot and puke. My dad had put hot sauce in my eyes. He was literally a junkie and my stepmom had to take us back the next day. Short and mysterious story time. So me and my sister were annoying and playing pranks on my mum and stepdad. We hid in cupboards and we changed locations making scary noises. Until eventually they found us and we admitted to it because we were just bored and we wanted to go to sleep. So like I would normally do, I went and slept with my sister because I wanted to stay in her room that night. We were just having general chit chat until we saw a man just standing there in the window. Legit, there was just a grey figure just standing there staring. We couldn't figure out his face. We didn't know if it was our parents playing pranks on us because we did it to them. But we was 11 and 12 years old. We was just so scared. So we were screaming for our parents, but of course they didn't believe us. It didn't even feel like they blinked an eye. No one responded to us. So we just assumed that it was our stepdad doing this. Until we ran into their room screaming and crying and they were legit just both there laying on the bed. They didn't believe us, and when my stepdad went into our room to go check it out, there was a piece of shattered glass just laying there on the bed. And still to this day, do our parents think that we placed it there. Follow my Instagram card Downton for more stories.
Story time of how we almost got kidnapped. So me and my best mate were having some cocktails by the river. It was summertime and time was flying by and it began to get dark. Bear in mind that the river to the main roads were like a 20-minute walk, so we were far from anyone and anything. The river was also quite hidden, so we agreed to go back before it started getting dark. It was a little scary. We had to go through the woods, and by the time we'd got onto this little motorway bridge, it was literally pitch black. And we still had so far to go. So we carried on walking, there was woods either side of us, and my friend legit made us stop because she had saw some bats, and I don't know why she thought they would stay there, but we ended up standing there for about 2 minutes. Dead ass, no joke, we were standing there and heard a whistle from the trees next to us, and when I tell you, we have never ran so far and so fast in our lives. It was horrifying. We still had to go over another little bridge. We had to go through train tracks and cow fields. We got over this river bridge and legit was running for our lives. My friend looked back and this guy was about 2 feet away from us. I'm running out of time, so like part 2. Story time. We almost got kidnapped part 2. So like I was saying, my friend looked back and this guy was about 2 meters away from us. We had got over the little bridge, but we still had to go over the train tracks, through the cow fields and all of that stuff. We were like halfway through the cow fields. We dropped our bottles and just carried on running. Then we had to go through the train tracks. Bear in mind, you have to open these gates to get through them, so that would just be holding back time. It was absolutely horrifying, but the guy must have stopped running because when we looked back, he wasn't there. But we continued running because we still had so far to go, and we had to walk home, which made it even worse. I guess it was our fault because we went back when it was dark, but we were just wondering what his plan was to do because he was just there by himself in the dark and in the woods. It's like, what was his plans? But anyways, the next day we decided to come back. I have no idea why we decided to come back, but we did. It was in the middle of the day and our straws and our bottles were literally laying there on the ground. It was so weird to see because we had dropped them the night before, but they were completely full and unopened. So when we dropped the bottles, that's when he must have stopped running for us.
Story time my roommate took from a sugar daddy edition. So we were at uni, and let's give her a code name, Nancy. So she would legit pay for everything, our drinks on nights out, our meals, our taxis on the way home. So we just thought she was like really rich. Until one day she legit broke down into tears in front of us and confessed everything. She had been maxing out her dad's credit card. 4 to 5 grand down. She was petrified she had used all of her uni allowance and then went to the Golden Glory, her dad's bank card. His bank card. We were shocked. We legit laughed through her pain, but generally just assumed she was like loaded. When I tell you, she paid for everything. Then as a joke, we was like, why don't you get a sugar daddy? Like, he can pay for this. She came back with this whole story. She had been on a date with this guy. She had drinks with this guy, and he legit laid that money out on the table, told her to take it and went because she clearly needed it. Until this day, she still uses that sugar daddy. This is my first ever story time, so like and follow my Instagram for more.
If a website ever asks you these questions, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Masha who heard that there's a new service that gives everyone free internet access. So she decided to use it, but this would lead to something horrifying for Masha and her family. After she connected to this internet service, a web page popped up asking her to register some information, but the questions were oddly personal. It asked, what's your usual mode of transportation? With a photo of a bus, a boat, a train, and a plane. Masha took her bike to school every day, so she clicked on the train instead. But the next day, the local news showed that there was a horrific train crash that killed everyone on board. Masha thought that this was a coincidence, but soon she'd realize that she made a deadly mistake. Later, she needed to use the internet again, so she logged back in. This time it asked, what kind of home do you live in? Along with 4 different pictures of different types of homes. She clicked apartment even though her and her family lived in a house. And the next day, the apartment building near her school burned down. The police suspected arson. Then she went back to the internet server one last time, but this time it showed a photo of her mother, father, sister, and herself with the question, who is your favorite family member?
My mother-in-law has hated me since day one because I grew up in a single-family household, and she told my husband that he deserved to be with someone who came from a 2-parent household. For 4 years, I bit my tongue trying to get her to like me. When we got engaged, she tried to dictate my whole wedding, not offering to pay for anything. When I decided I didn't want kids at the wedding, she flipped and told me I was selfish, that the wedding isn't for me, that I'm tearing her family apart, and that I'm ruining her life. Day of the wedding, she causes a scene because my mom danced with me and my husband, stealing her spotlight. My husband and her get into a fight, he storms away, and then she pushes me. I push her off, and then she lunges at me, going for my throat. She's literally trying to choke me at my wedding. All because I try to grab my husband and say that this was not the time for a fight with his mom. She gets escorted out by security. Fast forward to now. She tries to communicate with my husband, and my husband ignores her. Now he wants her back in his life. I don't know what to do. This lady put her hands on me at our wedding. I tried explaining to my husband how much she's hurt me, and he says he understands, but that's his mom. I don't know if I should let my husband talk to her again because I don't want him to resent me, but she crossed so many boundaries and she doesn't see what she did wrong. And she refuses to apologize to me.
I have a theory that babies don't cry when the first time when they leave the womb because it's their first breath of air, whether yippee yappy nonsense that y'all believe. I believe they're crying because it's the first time their back has ever been elongated in history. Because think about it, imagine spending 9 months in a place bent like this. Tell me that the first time you get to straighten up and elongate yourself, you wouldn't be crying of tears of joy.
Today at work, I was trying to call my wife, but for some reason, my phone calls weren't getting through to her, so I used one of my coworkers' phones to dial my house number and call home. So I call home, and a sweet voice answers the phone. It's my daughter. I go, hey, cutie, how you doing? She goes, hey, daddy, what's up? And I go, I'm just at work. What are you and mommy doing? She says, well, I just finished lunch, and mommy's upstairs. I go, cutie, what's mommy doing upstairs? She goes, she's with Uncle Paul. And I go, Uncle Paul? We don't have an Uncle Paul. What do you mean? She's like, yeah, she's with Uncle Paul. They're upstairs in their room. So I'm like, cutie, that doesn't sound right. So what I want you to do is I want you to leave the phone on the kitchen table, go upstairs to your mommy's room and say, hey, daddy just pulled in the driveway, and tell me what happens, all right? She did it, and like a minute later, she comes back and picks up the phone and goes, okay, daddy, I did it. And I go, okay, what happened? She goes, well, mommy came running out of her room naked, and she tripped down the stairs and bumped her head, and now she can't get up. So I was like, what about the other guy? And she goes, well, Uncle Paul tried to jump out of the window into the pool, but he missed and hit the floor. Now he won't wake up. So I was like, we don't have a pool. Then I look at the phone number, and I was like, oh, sorry, wrong number.
Girls, tell me about a time where your quick thinking probably saved your life. I'll go first. 2 years ago, I was walking my dog at the park, and a man approached me and asked to take a picture of her. And I said yes, because why not? It's a picture of a dog. So he starts taking a picture of my dog, and then I realized that he was like holding up her collar, and then it hit me. My address is on that collar. He's not taking a picture of my dog, he's taking a picture of my address. So I told him that I actually didn't feel comfortable with him having a picture of my dog, and I asked him to delete it. So he deletes it and then like starts walking away really fast. And I was like, excuse me, sir, no, could you also go into your deleted album and delete it from there? And he goes, I don't have a deleted album. And I was like, you have an iPhone. Everybody has a deleted album. Could you please delete the picture? And he was like, sorry, I don't have a deleted album. And like keeps walking away. And keep in mind, this is like 2 PM in a park. Like there's other people around. So now I'm like chasing after him and I'm telling him, sir, I know you have the album. I will show you where the album is. Can you please go onto your phone so that we can delete the picture? Oh, part two. I'm sorry for the delay. So I'm still chasing after him and people at the park are like starting to look at us now because I'm chasing after him and I'm telling him to stop walking. And so he stops and I tell him again to delete the photo from the deleted album and he goes, I don't have a deleted album. And I was like, yes, you do. Everybody does. It'll take 10 seconds. And he goes, fine. And he like goes in his phone, does something for a second. He goes, there, it's gone. And I was like, could I see the deleted album just to make sure it's gone? And he goes, no, you can't look at my phone. And I was like, I don't want to look at your phone. I just want to see the album just to make sure the picture is gone. That's it. And he goes, no, you're not going to look at my phone. And I was like, sir, I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to leave until you show me the album. So please just show me the album so we can be done with this. So he shows me the album. The picture was still there. So I made him delete it in front of my eyes. What if I hadn't noticed that he took a picture of my address? And what if I went home that day and, you know, that night when I took my dog out to pee, he was outside waiting for me? I mean...
I pulled over today and the cop comes to my window and goes, license, registration, and proof of insurance. And I look at him, I say, officer, I don't have my license on me. I don't have my registration. I don't have any proof of insurance. So then the cop looks at me and goes, and why the hell were you speeding? I caught you going 90 and 65. And I look at him and I say, officer, the reason I was speeding was because I just killed my girlfriend. I chopped her up and I put her in my trunk. So the cop backs off my window, says, listen, boy, wait right here. And he calls every cop in the area to come look at my car. So my car is now surrounded by cops, and the chief of police does a whole check. He checks my trunk, and all he finds is a backpack. So then he comes to my window. So the chief of police comes up to my window and says, listen, the officer who pulled you over said you had no driver's license, no proof of insurance, no registration, and that you just chopped up your girlfriend and put her in the trunk. But when I looked in the trunk, all I found was a backpack. I found nothing. And I look at the chief of police and I say, yeah, I know. This lying son of a bitch probably told you I'm speeding too, right?
Why you should be really careful how you treat people, and also why you should stick up for people. When I was in 8th grade, I was really good friends with this kid named Damon. Me, him, and this other friend of mine, we were all at the same table. In English class, we would joke around, talk about the same TV shows and movies. We were the loudest group by far. But near the end of the school year, Damon ended up moving. And it really sucked, but we said goodbye to Damon, who I should tell you was this small, short, funny, wisecracking kid. Didn't matter what you threw at him, he was super witty. So we said goodbye to him, we all went to 9th grade. It was either the end of 9th grade or the middle of sophomore year that I saw Damon again. He had transferred back to our school, saw him at a pep rally, and I was sitting by myself because I despised pep rally. He was like, Joseph, do you remember me? I was like, oh my gosh, David? He was so much taller, face looked different, his voice was deeper. This was obviously a different kid, but really happy to see me. So we started talking, catching up. Then I started noticing that he was getting hit in the back of the head with tiny paper balls. He wasn't even flinching. I looked behind me to see 3 boys throwing paper balls at him. What? Dude, do you see what they're doing? Yeah, I'm used to it. What? This was not the same witty boy that I knew. Oh my god, I'm running out of time. Watch part 2 to see my part 2 of the kids throwing paper balls at my friend's story. So when I told Damon this was happening and he didn't seem to notice, I was very confused. The kid that I used to know would not let this fly. He instead kept his head down, insisted that it was okay, and said that he was used to it. Whatever happened between 8th grade and now completely changed the way that he viewed this behavior. I saw it as unacceptable. He thought it was okay. So instead of accepting that, I turned around and said, hey, what are we in 5th grade? The 3 boys looked at me from the top of the bleachers and said, whatever. That's what high schoolers who act like 5th graders say. And then I said, stop it, it's not funny. They didn't stop. They laughed. But Damon thanked me. I didn't know who this kid was anymore. I can only assume that this type of stuff was happening to him often. That kids at his new school were treating him poorly. And because of that, he thought he was less than. I literally never saw Damon again after that day, but I hope that he knows that he can stand up for himself and that behavior is not okay. Be careful how you treat people, it stays with them. It can fundamentally change them. Get them, bye.
One thing I learned is when cops show up to a party, do not hesitate to run. There was a group of kids that stayed hiding in the basement. They hid in a closet, they hid in just like under the couch and rooms and shit. And then there was another group of kids who ran out the back door. Me and my buddy were a part of that group. So we're all running like a free-for-all, and this kid's backyard is just straight wilderness. Me and my buddy end up getting separated, and I'm fucked because my phone is dead. We gotta be at least like a quarter mile into the fucking forest by now, so I'm freaking out. I need to find my buddy. We need to meet up and do what his dad told us to do. So I'm standing all alone in the woods, and I just start screaming, Gary! A few seconds goes by. I hear my buddy scream from a distance, Gio! So we keep screaming like that until we eventually find each other. And my buddy was just with 2 random girls that we like didn't even know. They were staying by him because they were scared and they didn't know where to go. So now it's time to execute the plan his dad told us to do if shit went wrong. My buddy picks up his phone and calls his dad. His dad answers and he says, Dad, we're in a bit of a pickle. So his dad's just like, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Do what I told you to do. So pretty much he just wrote us this route we had to go if we had to run. When you look at this kid's house from a hole, there's the main driveway that leads up to the garage. And then on the side of that driveway, there's a gravel driveway that's like surrounded by trees. So he has 2 driveways. So we're in the woods right now. We navigate, dude. We do all these fucking maneuvers and we had to go through a bunch of thorn bushes. I'm getting scraped up. Now, something I didn't mention before. I had a backpack on with some herb in it. About 3.5 grams. So yeah, I was like shitting my pants. So we're going this route his dad told us to go, and eventually we hit the gravel driveway. We see his dad parked in his SUV right at the end of the driveway, waiting for us to just get in the car. The only problem was, on the main driveway, there had to have been at least 8 cop cars. We looked to our...
We vibe into a different height. Your hands touching my scars, body's shaking hard. I believe I can fly.
Look to our left and see like 20 kids with the cops just all getting booked, dude. So I just look at my buddy, I'm like, dude, don't even look at the police, let's just walk. We straight up just walked down this gravel driveway, past all these cops, past all these kids getting arrested, and we literally just get in my buddy's car. I'll never forget, his mom was sitting in the front seat, and his mom was like, Gary, where's your sweatshirt? And my buddy was just like, it's in the basement. And his mom told him to go get it. And his dad was driving, and his dad was just like, fuck that, floored it out of there.
What is your preferred way to go? If you had to die tomorrow, how would you do it? Can I tell you mine? I thought about it. So I have a wedding, I fall in love, and everybody's like, how did she do it? Like, this guy's amazing. And everybody's super jealous. And I charge $150 for the tickets to my wedding, which takes place on the cliff in Malibu. It's an hour late, and I'm still not there yet. And people are like, what the fuck is going on? They see a helicopter towing a woman in a white dress, and it's a stunt double that I hired, and she falls into the ocean, and everybody thinks I'm dead. Cue a second helicopter that comes in, and I'm hanging from it, but I die for real.
And they're like, oh, it's her, and now they're stunned.
Yeah, and then they wait an hour to figure out that I've died. Yeah. And they have to go home just disappointed.
You know a burden ain't a bust. You are the only way to trust ya. Only fair it burns up in that rust. Lay down my thumb. Lay down a holy banner flag. Hold down my thumb. Help is surely on its way. Don't bask in the glory of mine. And I know they can't come take that heart away. Bask in the glory of mine.
One time I was behind the register at Victoria's Secret. This customer walks in and immediately everybody spots her as a red flag. She's just picking up items, throwing them in her bag, not looking at sizes, not looking at colors. So everybody's like, Everyone's on their walkie like, watch this customer. She's coming to the fitting room. She's headed to the cash drop. Somebody get her. Check her ID. Get her. Get her. She has a bag full of stuff. And guess who gets her at the register? Me. So she comes to my register and she dumps out her stuff. And we're having a regular conversation. Hi, how are you? Yada, yada, yada. Her total comes up to probably between $700 to $900. It was expensive. My manager is at the register next to me talking to me on the walkie. Ashley, make sure you get that ID. Don't matter what she's using, make sure you get that ID. So I ask her for the ID because she's paying credit. Why do you need to ask for my ID? Just take it, run it. I'm like, no ma'am, I'm sorry, I need your ID for the purchase. She starts to raise her voice at me.
So y'all, let me tell you about this conversation I had with one of my friends. I just couldn't believe it. Okay, so she came up with this really, really good idea. And I was like, yo, that's dope, you should do it. And she was like, I can't, I just looked on Instagram and saw that they already have that. I said, so why can't you do it? She was like, because it's already on Instagram. Somebody already did it. I said, okay, so why can't you do it? She said, because somebody already did it. I said, didn't Rihanna create Fenty like there wasn't MAC? Did she not create Savage Fenty like we didn't have Victoria's Secret and other lingerie stores? How many McDonald's and Burger Kings are across from each other like they don't sell the same food? How many beauty supplies is selling the same bundle on the same block? Okay, the market is oversaturated, but it don't have a you, baby. Like if God gave you the gift, your gift gonna pop differently from theirs. Everything you touch prospers. So if they did it first, it don't matter. Yours gonna be different because the market is missing a you. And she was like, oh, I never thought of it like that. Yeah, Rihanna wasn't thinking like that either. She just created because God gave her a gift. And now look, billionaire. You sleeping on your dreams, kid. You sleeping on your dreams.
Imagine we get lost in love. Nowhere to go when you fall out of touch. Maybe I just don't know enough of this language you call love. I'll leave it to my head to think, cause right now I'm in between. And lately I've been scared to blink, cause I've been losing too much time to sink. And all these voices in my head, like, hello, are you there? Why do I feel alone again? On a trip to nowhere. And my past comes out to play, put all my fears right on display. And when it comes the end of the day, I hope these thoughts of you will fade. But I can't forget your face.